Welcome back to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It's time for the view from the opposition. This week it comes from Joe, part of the Turfcast covering Burnley. They are the visitors to St James's Park this weekend. Joe, welcome back. How are you doing? You well?
Yeah, really good myself personally, mate. But obviously, I'm sure we'll get to football matters in a minute. And it's looking, even the cricket's not looking good at the minute. I think we've just lost another wicket as I sit down. So, sport isn't my friend at the moment.
Yeah, Burnley certainly not going well at all. Another defeat in the midweek against Crystal Palace. That's 5 consecutive defeats now. It's not going well for Scott Parker at the moment.
No, it's not. And his interviews last night made him sound like a man under pressure. And there's been another one released by Sky Sports this morning where it almost feels like he's resigning himself to relegation, and the fans aren't reacting to that in a positive manner. I mean, it's December and he's come out and said, yes, I'm a fighter. These squad of fighters have got a group who will fight, but maybe that's not enough. Basically saying, yeah, we'll fight for you, but we're not good enough. That's how it's coming across for me. So, yeah, not a great month and a half, I think, probably now. The last, like you said, 5 games, that's 5 defeats in a row. Obviously, I'll caveat that slightly by saying 2 of them games are at home to Arsenal and Chelsea, but there has been 3 defeats in there that are poor defeats, if you will. West Ham away, Brentford away, and obviously Palace at home last night. And look, we know the Premier League's difficult. You know, Burnley should be going into games against West Ham, Brentford or Palace expecting a win. But we should be putting up more of a fight than what we have done in these games. You mentioned the midweek game there against Palace. Palace didn't do anything. Like they looked like a team who had just played on Thursday, then on Sunday, then on Wednesday again. They looked tired, but we offered nothing. They offered nothing, but they scored a goal with an easy floated ball into the box. Jadon Anthony loses his man, back post, free header. It's just not going very well at the minute. And like I said, it's 5 defeats in a row, but it's also 7 defeats out of 9. So, it's a poor run that Burnley run at the minute.
Premier League's a little bit crazy, isn't it, this season? Because you mentioned there, going into games against West Ham, Burnley, Palace, expecting to maybe get something. And if from a Newcastle point of view, you would say the same. And yet they've lost to Brentford and West Ham this season already. It's a bit of a weird campaign, strange results. I mean, Chelsea losing to Leeds, for example, probably doesn't help the mood within the Burnley camp, because you mentioned there, on paper, you say, oh, well, it's always going to be a win for Chelsea against Burnley or against Leeds, for example. But if Leeds are doing it, then why aren't Burnley doing it?
Yeah, and I've just made the same point myself to a friend on the phone, because he's watched some of the content that I put up, and he's rang me up and he's like, you look a little bit downbeat. I think you've got to realise it's not as bad as it looks. And I'm like, how? And he's like, well, some of the teams that we've lost against recently are Chelsea and Arsenal. I'm like, I agree with that. And as a Burnley fan, the majority of us, myself included, go into these games against the likes of Chelsea and just be like, just write it off. Our game, what a sentence I always like to say is that our season isn't defined on games against Chelsea and Arsenal, and it's not. But then Fulham went to Tottenham and won. Leeds have just beaten Chelsea at home, as you mentioned. I know Sunderland, apologies for mentioning them on the podcast, but I know Sunderland aren't down there with Burnley anymore, but they've just gone to Anfield and won. They've gone to Chelsea and won. So why are we as Burnley fans just writing these games off, myself included? It can be done. I don't think Leeds, man for man, are much, if at all, better than us. We've already beaten them this season, and we actually beat them very convincingly. We were the better side in a lot of that game. They had a lot of possession, but didn't do anything. The other promoted teams and some of the teams down there, apart from Wolves, are proving that you can go to these grounds and play against these teams and get 3 points. But we just seem to turn up and just be like, oh, it's a day out. Let's just turn up. We'll valiantly get beat or whatever, and then we'll go and focus on Brentford away, and then we lose at Brentford away as well. So yeah, it's all well and good writing these games off, but you've got to do well in the games around it as well, and that's not what we're doing at the minute.
It's interesting you mentioned Sunderland there, and they are absolutely flying. I think quite a few Newcastle fans are worried about next weekend.
I can imagine, yeah.
You say that the difference between Sunderland and Burnley, I mean, is that a massive difference in terms of the squad, or does it come down to the manager maybe just believing in him, believing in the players, believing in the approach, and maybe that's the difference?
I do think man for man, they probably at the start of the season, I wouldn't have said this, because I'll be honest with you, I didn't know too much about a lot of the Sunderland signings apart from Granit Xhaka. I've been watching play. I think, man for man, they probably are a better side than us now. They've invested very, very well, and that's the frustrating thing, because they were like, I mean, this stat might be off. Apologies if it is, but I think we were over 20 points better than them last season. And we finished second on 100 points, and I think they had 70 odd points wherever they finished, 4th, 5th, whatever. And it's frustrating to see them invest so well. Don't get me wrong, I don't begrudge Sunderland doing that. Fair play. You've got the money, go and spend it. You need to improve to keep yourself in the Premier League. Fair enough. We haven't not spent. We've spent a lot of money, and the last time I came up under Vincent Kompany, we spent a lot of money as well. The frustrating thing now from a Burnley perspective, seeing Sunderland do it, is Sunderland might have spent a little bit more, admittedly, but Sunderland have invested well. They've bought quality players. Again, like I said, I didn't know much about them, so I can't sit there and say, well, it's obvious they were building a good squad. But they've obviously got a recruitment team worth their salt. They've got a recruitment team and knows what they're doing. And I don't want to slag the Burnley recruitment team off, because I actually think they improved our side in the summer. When you look at the improvements, obviously, we might come on to him, but I think Martin Dubravka is a better goalkeeper right now than what James Trafford is. In terms of Premier League quality, Trafford will go on to have a better career than what Dubravka had, probably. But right now, I think he's better. Kyle Walker at right back, is he better than Connor Roberts? Probably. Quintus Schilly-Hartman at left back, is he better than Bashir Humphries? Probably. So we have improved. We've just not improved enough. And that's a frustrating thing. And I do think Reggie LeBrie is obviously a very good manager. Again, not somebody I knew too much about until he went to Sunderland, but he turned them round in the first season. Obviously, got them into the Prem, and now they're staying up, aren't they? I think conversations for Europe are a little bit premature, but we'll see. So yeah, I do think there's an element to both, but I think Sunderland have invested well, and that's where the frustration from me as a Burnley fan comes from, watching them invest well, whereas we have invested over recent years and still found ourselves back in the Championship.
We've talked there about writing certain games off. I'm really intrigued to get your answer to my next question. Are you writing this game off, or are you looking at Newcastle's form of late? And bearing in mind, it is 7 points out of the last 10, so it's not exactly poor, but there was a bit of frustration how they did perform against Tottenham on Tuesday. Are you looking at this one and thinking there's a chance we can get something here?
Me personally, no. I'm glad you mentioned that as well there, because when you said that, I remember thinking, I'm sure I've watched Newcastle twice on the TV recently, and they've won both of them games. And obviously the Tottenham game as well. Like you mentioned that, I don't think you were poor against Tottenham. You might not be adhering to the standards that Newcastle have set over the last few years, and you probably should have seen the game out, admittedly. But you weren't poor. I feel like if you play like you did against Tottenham, against us, you win the game. But yeah, I watched you against Everton, superb. At the Hill Dickey as well. Can't believe I'll just call it that in public. The Hill Dickinson Stadium, should I say, as well. I thought you were fantastic. Play like that against us, you're scoring another four. Me personally, yeah, I'm writing it off, but I didn't write it off before last night. I was going into the run of fixtures. I remember looking at it. We had Brentford, Palace, yourselves, then Bournemouth, then Everton, then I think yourselves again. And I'm looking at it and thinking, right, so we've had the start of the season. We've had City, United, Liverpool, Tottenham, Arsenal, Chelsea. These are the sort of games now where, yes, they're difficult. Every game in the Premier League is difficult, not to go full cliche on you. But they are sort of games that we can maybe look at and potentially get a result. But after last night and watching us just looking so... I've used the word abject a couple of times already. And we were abject in both boxes. In between the boxes, we actually played some decent stuff. But where it matters, getting into the final third, the last pass is always atrocious or overhit or misplaced, or it's a pot shot from the area that's comfortably saved. And then we're letting in goals at the back that are just schoolboy level. Like you genuinely would see it uptown. Again, lost reference on you guys, on a local Sunday field, Sunday League field. You know what I mean? It's just a floated ball back into the box. It's not even a whipped cross aimed for a certain player. It's just a floated ball hoping that it finds somebody. And then we don't pick our men up, and it's an easy goal. Like you've got some quality players. Obviously, you've got Woltemade, who's hit the ground running. I actually think you've ended up with not somebody better than Isak, but somebody who's doing better than Isak, and he's a very, very good player. And I am very worried about facing him. And obviously Anthony Gordon as well, Barnes. If our defence is struggling with floated balls into the boxes against Crystal Palace, who admittedly have got some good players, but like I said, they looked tired last night and didn't ever get out of second gear. Then we're going to struggle against the likes of the three I've just mentioned.
It's funny though, because on Tuesday against Spurs, one of the biggest frustrations that people came away from the ground with was the fact that they were just trying one too many passes as opposed to just getting the ball into the box. And it sounds like if they do get the ball in the box, then Burnley might struggle to deal with that. But it's whether they do that, against Everton, against Man City, they were getting the ball into the danger area. Against Spurs, they just seemed to want to hold on to it for some bizarre reason. And you mentioned there, you guys conceding poor goals. I don't know if you saw the 2 goals Newcastle conceded against Tottenham, but they were shocking from a Premier League standard. So Newcastle have got to be that little bit tighter to make sure that they don't allow the wingers to get the ball in and then stop the.
I wouldn't worry too much about our wingers and wide forwards at the minute. That's all I'll say on that one. But Jadon Anthony started the season quite well. No idea what's happened. Loom Chowner started, he's shown flashes. I would be mixing it up a little bit at the weekend with the wingers if I was Scott Parker, and maybe bringing in some wingers that are a little bit hungry and do want to run at your defenders. If that is something that you struggle with, then hopefully Scott's noticed that.
I mean, they tend to do all right in a foot race. It's just maybe Tuesday was just a little bit of an off day defensively, and hopefully Eddie Howe's watched the tapes back and is getting into them to make sure it doesn't happen again. In terms of the approach from Burnley, what are we expecting? Is it sit back and absorb, or are they going to try and take the game to Newcastle?
I would imagine up at St James's, it will probably be more sit back and absorb, and then maybe hit on the counter. Maybe something similar to what we did at the likes of Old Trafford and places like that. Recently, it's been bizarre because Scott has always been accused of being a negative manager, too negative, even well before his time at Burnley. Even last season in the Championship, we got 100 points, but we drew about 45 games 0-0. So he does get accused of being negative a lot. Whereas last night, he actually went for it. Isn't a term I'd use, but we started the game with four sort of like forward-thinking players on the pitch. We had Lyle Foster, Zian Fleming, Jadon Anthony, and Loom Chowner all on the pitch, and then we ended it with Brozier, Edwards, Hannibal, and JBL on the pitch. So it weren't for want of trying last night in terms of actual tactics and stuff like that. It was just a lack of quality. So I do think we'll try and soak it up, which is probably a recipe for disaster. Because, you might have said that Newcastle have been trying to sort of like walk the ball into the net and not be floating crosses in. But if that is the case and you do turn up on Saturday and try and walk the ball into the net and then it doesn't work for the first 10 minutes, you'll probably think, sorry, I'll just try a cross and it'll probably go in. That's where we're at the minute. So, yeah, look, genuinely, just like I said earlier, I weren't even joking when I used the anecdote of having a friend on the phone. He genuinely rang before this and I'd say, look, I've got to go. I've got a podcast in 5 minutes. And I don't know if he started drinking heavily or something, but he was saying, well, just look, listen, we could go up to Newcastle, get a point. And then we beat Fulham at home, they're up and down. Then we beat Bournemouth away. Then we play Newcastle again not long after that. They're still fuming we've got a point against them. So then we beat him at the turf. I'm like, I don't know what you're on, mate, but I want some of that. So please don't think me being miserable and moody is every single Burnley fan, but I do think it's the majority of us now. I think a lot of us have started resigning ourselves to the inevitable.
And do you think, because I saw your tweet before you came on about Scott Parker, as you've mentioned, in your opinion, resigning himself to relegation. I mean, if you're looking at his interviews, I can totally understand why you've come to that conclusion, because he looks like a man who's defeated already.
Yeah.
Do you think that's into the dressing room?
A little bit. I mean, if you're a player, you're at home now in Manchester or whatever, in Deansgate, Tower, wherever they all live, Cheshire, whatever, and you log on to Twitter on your secret account. We all know they've got him, and you see Scott Parker saying that. You're thinking, well, if he thinks I don't have enough quality, like, why should I bother? Like, if my gaffer thinks I don't have enough quality, maybe I don't have enough quality. So for me, I just think it's a little bit of a frustrating interview to hear early December, when there's still 6 months left of the season. I agree with him, if I'm honest. But I'm allowed to say that Jadon Anthony doesn't give one hoot what I say. But his manager saying it, I can understand if it is in the dressing room. Even last night, like at the full-time whistle, Hannibal was on the floor for a few minutes, didn't get up until someone picked him up. I do feel like now there's an air of inevitability around Turf Moor that it's probably going to happen again. We're probably going down again. Like my friend said on the phone, I've mentioned him 3 times now, so give me a shout out. Robbie is called. It can turn around very quickly. That's the nature of the Premier League. If we go to St James's Park and win 2-0, for example, that is a huge win. Like, we're going to a team that's obviously won trophies recently, played in the Champions League and things like that. That would be a huge win if we could pull it off. And that's the type of win that could turn our season around. Do I think we have enough quality to go to St James's Park and win? Probably not. Do I think we have enough quality to keep a clean sheet? Probably not. So, while I agree with him, I think it's frustrating to hear him say it, which makes me sound very hypocritical. But at the same time, He can't win because he came out last night immediately after the full-time whistle and said, I actually thought we played quite well. It was just sort of like the final ball and the defending wasn't great, which, again, I agree with him. But then Burnley fans were like, this guy's lost the plot, get him out now. And then he comes out later on and says, yeah, we're not good enough. Like, oh, bloody, it's a red flag, get him out now. It's like, he can't win at the minute. He's just at that stage now, as you'd expect after 5 defeats in a row, where literally anything he does or says is ridiculed. It's the finer amount, and then he'll just get dogs abuse on Twitter, which is what Twitter is for these days, to be fair.
It's a bit of a cesspool, isn't it?
Isn't it?
Just a reminder, ladies and gents, this episode is sponsored by NORD VPN. Do click the link in the podcast description box. Get a discount offer on your plan. No risk with a 30-day money-back guarantee. One subscription can be used across 10 devices. Do sign up, keep yourself protected, and support the podcast at the same time. I can hear, Joe, what our listeners and viewers are shouting right now, and it is the fact that we've had people on this podcast of rival teams saying we've got no chance. The West Ham fan that we always have on is famous for it, because the last 2 appearances he's had on this podcast, he's absolutely slated the manager. He's got no hope. He said you could play with 8 players and still win the game. What happened? Newcastle went and lost badly. And I've got that kind of dread within me, because we've been burned before where someone has come on and been honest and brutal about their chances of picking up 3 points against Newcastle. And yet Newcastle always seems to be what the doctor ordered for a team needing a victory. What's kind of your viewpoint on that? Are you trying to see the positives ahead of Saturday?
If it was at the Turf, I might hold a little bit of hope, because your away form has been poor up until the win at Everton. But your home form has been decent. And I don't ever remember getting a decent result at St James's. I might be wrong. My memory has been awful. I remember drawing there 3-3 quite a few years ago. Have we ever won there in recent history? I don't think we have. Like I said, I do apologise. I'm awful for this on podcasts. Like I'll come out with a stat and it's just completely wrong. My memory's shocking. I do worry for when I'm in my 50s, but anyway, that's a different debate. But no, I don't have any faith whatsoever. Unless look, listen, if I don't ever wish injuries on players or anything like that, but if Woltemade pulls up in the first 5 minutes with a tight hamstring and just says, I can't play this game, and then hopefully he's back for the next game for you guys, and then Anthony Gordon gets a red card, or Dan Burn headbutts Hannibal, because Hannibal loves winding people up and he can get in people's heads. That's how the song goes. Maybe he winds somebody up so he headbutts them. Then maybe we have a chance. Football's a funny game, but it's one of them. I feel like when we went to Old Trafford, we had the chance. United weren't playing well. We had the chance to sort of like take the game to United and frustrate them, maybe get them on the back foot a little bit, because when Old Trafford's quiet at the best of times, and when they're not playing well and a team's on top, they can get frustrated, and then obviously that all then goes on to the pitch. I feel like if we did something like that to you, because again, St James's Park, I feel is similar, not in the sense of it being quiet like Old Trafford, but if the fans are frustrated, they're very vocal, and then that can then get onto the pitch, and then players start making mistakes. If we took the game to you and we're on top for the first 10, 15 minutes, then things could snowball. But as I've said, I don't think that's how we'll set up. I think we'll set up to sit back, so you'll have a lot of the ball, the fans will get behind you, and then the Gallagher end will just suck it into the net. I don't feel like we have the quality or the know-how to sort of like get through the games at the minute. So yeah, I'm not predicting a Burnley win or even a Burnley point at the weekend, if I'm honest.
Thing is, if you turn up and you do sit back and absorb and you have that kind of low block, that's where Newcastle really struggle. They are much better against sides that like to take the game to them, because then they can stop them and hit them on the counter with that pace. And that's at the moment where Newcastle are at their best. They're trying to be this team who are better when they have the majority of possession, but they are struggling at the moment to transition into that side. It'll take a little bit of time, but yeah, it'd be so interesting to see how Burnley is set up. In terms of one strength, there must be one strength that Burnley have, and that Eddie Howe will be looking at and saying, yeah, we need to stop this.
Yeah, I think for me, the midfield is probably the strongest area. We've got 3 very good midfielders in there. We've got Florentino Luis, who we signed from Benfica in the summer. He's done very, very well. Josh Cullen, who's been at the club for 4 years now. We love him. He's a captain. He's done very, very well. And Big Les, as we call him at Burnley, because we can't pronounce his last name, Leslie Ugochukwu. Again, see, I've got that wrong there. He's done very, very well, but frustratingly, Parker has dropped him for the last couple of games. It's been frustrating, as I've said, but I can understand his thinking. He's trying to get some more creativity in there. Even players off the bench, Hannibal, like he comes on with a lot of energy. I know a lot of opposition fans hate him, and I did as well when he played against Burnley for Man United and Birmingham. Wound me right up. But he's one of them players that you hate to love, and you want him on your side. So yeah, we have got a decent midfield. It's just the goalkeeper as well. Like I said, Dubravka's done well since he's come in. We do like him at Burnley. Had a bit of a mare at West Ham, but other than that, he's done pretty well. So yeah, I feel like the midfield three is the best part of the pitch. But up front and at the back is where we're being let down at the minute.
And if I was to ask you about the main weakness, is that where you would pinpoint the lack of threat up top?
Lack of threat up top. In fact, I'd probably lean more towards goals we're conceding now. Because, I think we have outscored some teams in the Prem, or last time I checked we'd scored more goals than a few teams. But there's some of the goals we conceded. Like, we have genuinely conceded the same goal in the last 3 games. Ball floated towards the back post, defender not doing the job properly, free header or easy header, 1-0 or whatever. Like, we conceded the same goal against Chelsea, Brentford, and now Palace. So I hope Eddie Howe doesn't watch this or read the paper. But if you float a ball into the back post, you're probably going to get a chance. So yeah, I'd probably say they're defending at this stage now, despite how good we were last season with it.
And that leads me on to a final question before we get the prediction in. You've already mentioned your fear of Nick Woltemade. If I was to ask you the one player that is going to keep you awake over the next couple of nights, is it going to be him?
Yeah, and again, apologies if I butchered his last name, because you said it perfectly there compared to what I've been saying it over the last 20 minutes or so. But yeah, like I said, he's come on, he's done very well. Like, obviously, you did well to replace Isak with the amount of goals that he's scored over the last few years for Newcastle. I'm sure you boys are loving how poor he's been at Liverpool. I actually prefer Ekitike for Liverpool at the minute. Having watched Liverpool a few times this season, I think he's actually the better forward, if I'm honest. But yeah, for me, it's Woltemade. He's done very, very well. He's come in, been brilliant, and yeah, you must be delighted with how well he's done.
Yeah, he's done superb. Great holder player, and hopefully the next few weeks, maybe even on Saturday, we'll get to see Johan Wissa as well, because I think them two working together as Voldemort as a number 10 could be something special. But we'll wait to see if Wissa is involved for the first time in a black and white shirt. All that remains to be done then, Joe, is to get your score prediction for Saturday. How's it going to go?
At Newcastle 2, Burnley 0, I think, for me. I'm not expecting much, if I'm being honest with you. We don't create enough. We concede poor goals. So, yeah, I can't see scoring at St James's. And I think you score a couple of goals against us as well.
We'll take that, won't we, ladies and gents? Let us know in the comments your thoughts. What's the score going to be between Newcastle and Burnley this weekend? Big thanks to Joe for popping on to the podcast and provide the insight into Burnley. Big thanks to you guys for watching and listening. Fingers crossed, it's 3 points for Newcastle United.